Greetings, PLO Order members. Another episode of weekly videos. Now we're going to dive in the world of splash pots and going through some general strategy in splash pots. And let's start. Splash the pot. What it means is there's extra money added to the pot preflop. On run it once you have splashed the pot. Then on GG Poker you have cash drops. And I'm quite sure that other sites are going to implement this kind of reward system at some point. But we're going to focus on run it once, splash the pot. And what makes it special is that the splash money in PLO is not part of the pot for betting. Which means that pre-flop, even if there's 10 BB as added money, you cannot open for 13.5 BBs. You can only open 3.5 BBs. So it's not the same as antes. Like on GG Poker, cash drop, you can treat it as antes. So if you know how to play on ante pots, you know how to play on cash drops. But splash the pot is not part of the pot, which makes it unique. So even in the bigger splashes, you can make big bets and raises pre-flop. What happens with the dead money? It increases the EV of all hands. So whatever hand you have, the expected value goes up, which turns a lot of the marginal hands into winning ones. And even 3 BB splash is quite a lot, because actually it means that for your hand values, 300 BP per 100 hands is added to the win rate of the whole table. So if you divide that by 6, it's 50 BP per 100 on average per player. So that is a huge improvement, and as you can see today, it means we're going to play a lot of hands, because all those marginal losing hands become marginally profitable. But even if there's a big splash, like 25 big blinds, like on PLO, then there's 2.5 euros extra money in the pot. It doesn't really affect your preflop all-in requirements. 5-way all-in, normally it requires about 20%. If everyone has 100 BB, to stack on 5-way, you need to have at least 20% versus the ranges. If there's 25 BB splash, the requirement is 19%, so your range is pretty much the same. So don't go crazy. This is what happens to most people. They see there's 10 big blinds, extra money, so they think they can just stack off with anything. And that's very far from true. We can play a lot of hands, but to stack off, we don't need. The beauty in PLO, although, is that if it's 5-way all-in, then everyone has 20%. Pretty much no matter what the hands are, unless there's some sick dominations and blocking effect. But versus any ranges, almost any hand has 20%. So if there's that big 5-way all-in coming up, don't shy on gambling if you have not potential in your hand. But don't go crazy. Don't start to 3-bet crappy hands because they're dead money and so on. So, general strategy for splash pots. I mean, today the video is general preflop strategy. We're going to compare different splash sizes, how it affects the frequencies. We are not going too heavily on the actual ranges. If we do that for all different splash amounts and situations, we will be here during the Christmas watching this video. So general strategy is that those slightly losing hands become plus EV, so we can play more hands. The bigger the splash, the more hands we can play. And you don't have to be I'm going to explain later how to implement the strategy in real life. All right. Normally we, especially in small stakes where high rate, we don't limp, so we always open for pot. But now we implement the strategy where we limp some hands and open some hands. And the bigger the splash the pot is, the more we limp. So let's start with some numbers. Now, the next 15 minutes or so will be quite number heavy. So you can write it up. So you will be saving those frequencies because there's going to be a lot of numbers now. Raise first in, limping strategy, middle position, 5 max. And the reason why all of these frequencies are 5 max is that I can only make solver simulations of 256 gigabytes of RAM. And it's enough for normal 6 max. But when we implement limping and we want to have some precision on the sim, the tree gets so big that it's hard to make 6 max sim with limping. And another reason is to be able to make splashbot sims was hard as hell. I mean, you can't just add dead money to the bot because then it affects the preflop sizing. So what I had to do is manually build a tree with bed sizings for normal 3.5 pp open and so on, for open 3 bedding, 4 bedding, and 5 bedding preflop. And I had to manually do that. And with 5 players, it took a lot of time. I mean, I spent 2 weeks on that project before I managed to get the tree right. If there were 6th player, it would go exponentially higher, and it would have taken another 2 weeks or even more to just build up the tree and hope there's no errors. So I made 5 max sim. You can just assume that on 6 max, if the UTG phones, then you can use exactly these strategies. But the important thing is to see tendencies and understand how solver creates a strategy for splash bots and then implement that on your game with adjustments. So that's why it's 5 max. So for middle position, first position, normally this is running once PLO 50 with 50% rate back settings. So normally from middle position or 5 max UTG, we open 21%, we fold 79, and we don't limp. When we add 3 BB splash, so there's 3 BBs dead money on the pot, it changes a lot. Now we raise 50% of hands, but we limp 33. So the thing is that the bigger the splash is, the less we open, but the more we limp. So the overall number of hands we play on 3 BB splash from middle position goes from 25 to 48. So we play half of the hands, and that's just 3 BB extra money. Then if there's 8 BB splash pot, now we play 75% of hands. We open only 10%, so once again the opening range goes down, the limping range goes heavily up. So 8 BB splash, we play 75% of hands, and if you think about bottom 25% of hands, they're super crappy. And from 15 to 75, it's still quite crappy. But with 8 BB splash, it's a huge splash. We start to play 75% of hands from the early positions only. And if there's 25 BB splash, you can see that we play 94% of hands, so pretty much everything but trips and quads. Rainbow trips and quads. That's about it. And we limp 83%, we open only 11%, but we limp almost with everything because the 25 BB money on the pot is so huge. So just by looking at these nice balls here, or pies, splash pies, you can see that even 3 BB splash is significant. I haven't made a sim for 1 BB or 2 BB because I've always thought that with 1 BB you can play pretty much your normal strategy and it's going to work fine. And 3 BB is the first significant splash size, and you can see how it affects the early position ranges. Let's go to cutoff. Normal 5 max for reference, I wanted to include the normal frequencies for the sim, because with different settings, the sim might give you slightly different numbers. So now you can compare. So normally we open 30% from the cutoff, 3 pp, boom. We play almost 60% of hands, and we raise 23 once again. Raising frequency goes down, limping goes up. And easy way here to go from 30 to 23 is to add some monsters to your limping range, because we have to protect the limping range a little. So you don't have to go too complicated. It's just you open your normal range, but double-suited aces, double-suited kings, those monster hands, you can limp. And then hope someone raises, which happens very often, and boom, report it. So that's an easy way to create the opening range and then limp along with those monsters, those more marginal ones. 8 pp splash, limping 74% from the cutoff, and opening on 30%. And this is quite opposite what people would think. Like, let's say it's a 6 max, and there's 8 pp splash, and suddenly UTG and middle position fold. So you're on the cutoff facing button and blinds, and there's 8 pp dead money. And you would be keen to open with almost anything, because with the fold equity, the price and EV is so huge, but solver doesn't. Even with 8 pp dead money in the bot, is still open from 13% and limp 74. So, and in reality, what happens when you limp, then button is very often going to overbet or over raise there, which means that then you can limp re-raise. And it's a nice thing. Normally limp 3-bet is fishy move, but now with the splash pots we all can do that with aces. Limp 3-bet. You don't get to do that normally, ever. And with 25 pp splash, we play 98% of hands, which is crazy shit, because it's pretty much the quads that we fold. Even trip hands we start to play. Well, there you go. We actually open 20%, because now, from 3 pp to 8 pp, the orange part, the raising range goes down, but with 25 pp, now solver wants to open more, because now with the fold equity, the EV of a raise goes up a lot. Then from the button, for some miracle reason, everyone folds and you're on the button. Normally, we play 50-50, or 49-51 to be precise. With 3 pp splash, we open the same. We open 50%, and then we limp 31%. So what actually happens here, we start to open a bit more hands from the bottom of our range, but then from the top of our range, we add some super strong hands to our limping range. Oh, space sneezing. But from the bottom, 3 pp splash, we play 81% of hands. So, quite a lot. 8 pp splash, we play pretty much virtually everything from the button, except the quads. Opening 33, limping 64. And with 25 pp, pretty much the same as 8 pp. You can fold quad deuces, because it's drawing dead versus pocket pairs. So, sometimes you see this happening, everyone folds, or you could play 3 max, 3-handed and button folds. So you're on the small blind with the splash money. Without the splash money, we would open 39%. With 3 pp splash, the difference is huge on blind versus blind. We limp 88, open only 8, and fold just 4% with 3 pp splash. So I'm quite confident that none of you guys have played this way on blind versus blind with 3 pp splashes. 8 pp, opening 23, folding only 1%. and then limp in the rest. And 25 BP, this is actually weird that when there's 25 BP splash, now solver wants to fold 10% of hands. And the reason is that when there's 25 BP, it's so much dead money that big blind will start to raise more. So it opens 48, limps 42, and just folds 10% because those are so bad that if big blind is playing over strategy, the small blind will have a tough time realizing the equity. But in reality, big blind is not playing over strategy with 25 BP splash, so you can still limp with almost anything. Alright, the next one is going to be 3-bet call versus open. So now we have figured out the opening ranges, open limping ranges. But now when we face an open, so someone has opened the pot, which is 3.5 BPs, what do we do? And we have different kinds of charts here. First is a normal pot. So on the normal PLO 55 max sim, on the top is our position. From the left on the blue is the opening position. So we can see that from the cutoff versus middle position open, we 3-bet 6% and call with 9%. So overall, defending frequency is 15. And we're not going to go through every number, but a rough guideline here is that we 3-bet 5 to 7% versus rolling position, and then versus late positions closer to 10%. So all the 3-bets are basically between 5 and 10, except big blind versus small blind. But I mean, for your overall win rate, it doesn't matter whether you 3-bet 10% or 12%, which is unknown. But just pay attention to overall 3-betting frequencies and then some overall calling frequencies. From the button, we call with 15% of hands. From small blind, very tight. From cutoff, very tight. From big blind, a bit more. And now we compare it to when there's 3 BP splash. And the interesting thing is that the 3-betting frequencies don't really go up. So if we compare the numbers, it's virtually the same. I mean, you don't have to change your strategy if here button 3-bet 6% and with the splash it 3-bet 7%. You can use the same range. None of us has, the absolute correct range for 3-betting in solver strategy. But the takeaway is, with 3 BP splash, don't start to 3-bet more. But what happens is, especially in position, we start to call more. And on the small blind, there's a huge difference. Normally, we call with very tight range. Now, we start to call with quite a lot. We defend around 40% of hands. And on the big blind, we don't really want to fold. We only fold super craps. And that's only 3 BP splash. When we go to the 8 BP pots, you can see that 3-betting doesn't go up that heavily. It's slightly more with 8 BP. So it's closer to 10 on all positions, but it doesn't go crazy. But the calling ranges are going wide. Big blind doesn't fold anything, small blind playing 70% of hands, button playing 70% of hands, even cutoff playing 50% of hands. So the bigger the splash is, the more we are going to call. But it doesn't mean we're going to 3-bet more. Because our around 10% 3-betting range is so value heavy that if we go over 10%, we start to add some crappy hands to it. When it's 25 BPs, now the 3-bet goes up to 20. Big blind versus small blind, as we said, 3-bets 30%. That's why small blind is going to just fold the crappy hands. So big blind doesn't fold anything, small blind doesn't fold anything, button doesn't fold anything, cutoff folds only super crappy hands. So you call with almost anything versus open with the 25 BP big splash, and you can 3-bet with wide range, top 20%. And Top 20% in PLO is pretty much all the good hands. So if you think your hand is good, with 25 BB splash versus 1 open, just 3-bet, isolate, create fold equity. Any fold equity there is huge. Then next one is going to be squeeze and call. And the chart looks like this. Once again, on the top, R position from the left, opening position, and the call position. So what this means in normal strategy, middle position opens, cutoff calls, we are on the button. And the first number is the 3-bet, and now second number, the 9, is the cold call, creating 3-way pot. And we can see the 3-bet range is really tight, 6 and 7, button small blind calling range really tight, even on the big blind, when there's open and a call, the ranges are quite tight. 3 BB, the whole world changes. 3-betting remains virtually the same, so once again, no reason to 3-bet wider. But what happens, the calling ranges start to go up. Button, 20% more, small blind, 15 to 20% more, and big blind, playing 70% of hands, even on 3 BB splash. When we go to 8 BB, the numbers just go up. You can see that the 3-betting doesn't go crazy at any point here. So even with 8 BB splash, you can use the same 3-betting range as normally, but you just start to call with almost anything on the big blind, anything decent on the small blind and button. And 25 BB, same tendency, 3-bet goes up. So you can see that the squeeze in 3-bet range is pretty much the same as normal 3-betting range. So easy way to know when to squeeze. Would I 3-bet this versus 1 open? If yes, then you can 3-bet versus open and call. Make your life easy. So 20% squeeze and then pretty much call with everything else. Then how do we play versus limpers? And this is versus 1 limp. And I do have the numbers if there's multiple limpers, but can't go too complicated here, because I want to show you some of the actual hands and so on. We don't have a normal strategy, because we don't, pretty much, we shouldn't face limpers when we make sims, because we shouldn't limp. But once we are in the splash spots, there's good players, the ones we need to play against them with solver strategy, they're going to limp. So here it is, on the top are positions from the left, or on the left, the limping position. So when the first position 5 max limps, cutoff raises 18% of hands, calls with 40% of hands. So you can see that the raising range from the cutoff and button is decently wide, 20 to 30%, and calling with really wide range. But then on the blinds, especially small blind, it doesn't 3-bet maniacally, but quite a lot, 10%. And then on the big blind versus button limp, which is very weak in general, 3-betting 31% of hands. So if you play 3 max, there's 3 BB splash and button limps, you should fire up 31% of hands, which is huge. And if the small blind limps, then you raise half of your hands. With 8 BB splash, we can see that 3-betting doesn't go up a lot, except on the big blind. But versus limper, we are not folding almost anything on any position. So versus 3 BB, or in the 3 BB splash versus limper, you can see that we're folding the crappiest of the crappy hands from cutoff and button. Even button, 80% of hands are played, so almost everything. But in 8 BB splash, if there's an limper, we're not folding, period. 25 BB splash, we're not folding, but 3-bet versus limper goes up a lot, because now generating any fold equity is going to be huge. So you can see that versus a limper on 25 BB splash, we go maniac. or we go average Finnish PLO player. 3-betting 30% to 50% of hands. So, before we go to simplified things, which is, if this is a bit too complicated, how you can simplify your life, let's look at STP splash. And first, from the under the gun, we have the calling range. And we're going to limp 65% of hands. So what do we have there? Let's say board aces, it's 2 to 1. 1/3 of aces we open and 2/3 we call. And we can see that, let me see, there it is. Oh. Double suited aces, 93.5 or pretty much 94% of times double suited aces are limped. So that's pretty good. Same is with double suited kings. 98% of double suited kings are limped. 93% of double suited queens are limped. 82% of double suited jacks are limped. And the smaller the pocket pair goes, the more it opens double suited. But aces, kings, queens, double suited, you can just pretty much limp, and then it limp 3-bets, those kind of hands. We still fold quad aces. That's the only one. So that's kind of being, what if we have hand like ace, king, queen then? Ace, king, queen then, double suited, it's limped, and rainbow, well, make it easy. Double suited, once again, super premium hand, we limp. Not so premium, we just open. So if you're wondering how to balance the limping range, pretty much when you add those double suited Broadway monsters, double suited Broadway pairs, double suited Broadway rundowns, then you protect your limping range a lot. Like, let's say we limp button 3-bets, everyone folds. Now we can see that all the double suited ace, king, queen thens, we limped, we raise. And what about the queens? If we have double suited queens, now it opens, or 3-bets half, calls with half. When we go to kings, it starts to limp 3-bet almost everything. I would say that simplify your life, limp 3-bet all the kings and 100% of aces. So that's a way to balance the limping range. Put up some monsters there, go for limp re-raise. So, to simplify your life, if implementing the limping strategy seems too complicated, like you're not sure how to make it, then another option is to just adjust your opening ranges. So you can play no limping strategy even on splash pots and still play probably better than average players. And versus this strategy, 3-bet calling is almost the same. So if someone opens and you know that, okay, he's never limping on splash pots, he's always opening or not, then just 3-bet call, or 3-bet or call as you would if you knew he was a limper who has a mixed strategy. So it doesn't really affect, the numbers are quite close to each other. And we're not going to go through all the positions. I'm going to show you one example on STP splash so you can see the tendencies. So STP on the middle position, if we have a limping strategy, we open 10%, limp 65, so we play 75% of hands. If we have only opening strategy, so we either pot or fold, then we're going to play half of the hands. Cutoff 60, button 8 is small blind 93. It's not as effective as having a limping strategy, but if you want to make it simplified, then you can see on the numbers that with 8 BP splash, we're going to open tons of hands. And it's still going to be decent strategy because opponents are not playing perfectly versus it. With 3 BP splash, open slightly less, but more than normal. And on 25 BP, open not everything, but almost. So, if you don't want to limp, the more there is dead money in the pot, the more you should open. It's easy way to play splash pots if you have no idea what to do. And calling ranges, the more there is splash money, the more you call. Now the hard part is almost none of your opponents are going to play with this strategy. Especially if you play on PLO 20 PLO, then most opponents, or even PLO 50, because no one has done this since not many players are playing the perfect strategy pre-flop. So how to adjust? Someone stole my slide. I had a slide about average player, but the droids are missing it. Damn. Well, the average John Doe on small stakes, what he's going to do is, if he limps, his limping range is capped. He's not limping double-suited aces. So his limping range is already weak. So you can attack his limping range more than you would if he has a balanced limping range. Also, what average John Doe is doing on Splashboard, he opens too much. So with really strong hands, definitely go for 3-betting. And they also 3-bet too much. I remember when Run It Once started, we with not raising fellow streamer, we had this note of Splash the Pot Mania, STPM, which means that whenever there was splash money, people went bananas. I mean, they started to 3-bet Queen 9-7-3 single suited type of hands. They thought there's dead money, we can go bananas here. And some people do. They see the extra money, those golden chips, and they start to 3-bet everything. So the way you can adjust is to pay attention how people play on splash pots. Because the thing is that for 100 PP poker, there's a lot of information how to play it well. There's solver simulations, solver strategies. And the higher your coin stakes, the more your average player knows how to play 100 PP situations. When we add a variable, like Splash the Pot, where no one has a solver strategy except you guys now, you are privileged, then it creates room to be a lot better than the opponents. When no one knows for sure how to play them, there's a lot of guessing, there's a lot of different strategies. And then the one who knows more than the others can gain a huge edge on those situations. So splash pots are very profitable if you know how to play them. You should be able to get more than your share of 31%. But make notes how people play, because people have very different strategies. You see someone limping with double-suited aces or limp 3-bet. I mean, if he just limp 3-bets on splash pots, you can make a note that has limp 3-bet range. You know that his limping range has some balance, so probably he knows something about splash the pots, or he has an idea how to play them. If someone opens super crappy hand, you know that, okay, splash money makes him go bananas, and so on and so on. So when you make notes, then you can adjust. And the takeaway on this video if you want to take away one thing, is to understand how splash money affects your strategies. And even 3 PP splash is a huge thing. It changes things dramatically. If you play 3 PP splash pots just the normal way, you're giving up a lot of EV, a lot of edge that you can gain versus your opponents. And the more there is splash money, the more it starts to affect our strategies. The more hands we should play, the more profitable those crappy hands become. So don't overfold. Don't overplay your hands, but don't overfold. In bigger splashes, what often happens, we call, see the flop, miss it, and give up. And it doesn't matter because there's so much dead money that once we hit, it pays out. So, hope you enjoyed half an hour or something more about Splashbot general strategies. And if you want to know more about specific ranges and so on, then just open a topic on the Discord and we'll see what we can do. But hope you enjoyed. I'm quite happy for this video. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't been seen anywhere. So we are privileged to have a glimpse of solver strategy on Splashbots. I will see you in the next video. Stay safe. Bye bye.